education, public safety, healthcare, government, business. These and other important issues affecting our local community are identified and discussed with local and civic leaders here on Community Impact. Now with today's guest, here's our host, Jay Trelease.
Welcome to Community Impact. My guest today is Pat Smith. Pat is the president of the Lyme Disease Association, something we all should be thinking about during these summer months, especially if we're going out and recreating out in the woods or taking hikes or playing out in the open fields. So Pat, thank you so much for being our guest at Community Impact. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
How did you get involved in this? Because there's a personal story behind your association with the Lyme Disease Association.
Yes, that's correct. In the mid-'80s, the school district that I was a board member in Wall Township got heavily impacted with Lyme disease cases, and no one knew what it was. So we were the first district to gather information and put it out for parents. And then, fortunately, I think for me, a couple of years later, two of my daughters were diagnosed with Lyme disease, and one has had it for over 25 years.
Wow, two of your daughters.
Correct.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your daughter who's had it for 25 years, because she went through a really challenging time with the disease, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She was out of school for 4 full years, 2 partial years. Wow. And she was on home instruction during that time. Also, for a 3-year period in there, she was in seizures for 15 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week.
That's unbelievable. You know, needless to say, this disease is no joke, and I think anybody who's ever had it or knows somebody who's had it, I mean, it is devastating.
Yes, it's devastating physically, emotionally, and also financially for patients and their families.
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, you must have been beside yourself seeing your daughter really suffering like that.
Yes, it was a journey that I did not want to see any parent repeat, and so that's when I decided to devote the rest of my life to trying to eradicate this disease and to help people who had it.
You know, Pat, we just met really just moments ago, and one of the first things you said to me was, I've got to get the word out to people. And I found that very striking. You're a lady who has really a message. You have a mission, and the mission is your message about Lyme disease. So this is your forum. Get the word out right now. What do you want people to know about it?
Well, I think it's very important that people understand every aspect of it in a small way. And that is, first of all, a lot of times people don't realize that Lyme disease in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania, for example, are very serious. Pennsylvania is number 1, New York is number 2, and New Jersey is number 3 in case numbers. And people don't always recognize that they need to pay attention. Additionally, they need to pay attention to any tick bite, not just a bite from a deer tick, but most of the ticks that bite you in these areas can and do transmit all different kinds of tick-borne diseases that can be difficult to diagnose and difficult to treat.
You had told me that also between the age of 4 and 15, particularly that age group is susceptible, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, when you're between the age of 4 and 15, you're most likely to be outside, you're most likely to be playing around, rolling around in dirt, rolling around just about anything that you can find at that age. Not such a good idea these days, is it?
No, unfortunately it isn't. The days when our children could play in the leaves, or even our dogs or cats could roll in the leaves, are long gone, because ticks tend to hide under leaf piles and under any kind of ground cover. If you have ornamental plantings around your house, they will hide there. And people think you have to have woods. You don't have to have woods to have ticks. Okay, they can be anywhere, again, where there's ground cover. Now, if you routinely mow your lawn and rake your lawn, you're not likely to have ticks right on that area, mainly because ticks get dehydrated if they're out in the sun for too long, so they can't. They have to be moist. But you will find them on the edge of fields, on the edge of woods, places like that. And of course, obviously, you will find them in the woods also. So what happens with the deer tick, it hangs along pathways and the edge of these areas on low grasses or even low tree branches. And when you come by, or your dog or your child, and it kind of reaches out for you and grabs you, and that's how it feeds. But other types of ticks, like the Lone Star tick, which is very prevalent in New Jersey now, that is a very aggressive tick. That actually will run after you, and it's very fast. So you really have to be careful for all types of ticks.
You know, you mentioned at the edge of fields, at the edge of the forest. Well, there's another animal that hovers around the edge of the field and the edge of the forest, and that's the deer itself. Should I assume if I see a lot of deer that there's going to be deer ticks around? Is that a proper assumption?
Well, most likely the deer are going to be carrying, hundreds of ticks, which they do. But people think that the tick gets the disease from the deer, when now they believe that in actuality, that most of the disease that the ticks pick up is from small mammals, such as white-footed mice or voles or chipmunks, even squirrels. They actually have the Lyme bacteria in them, and the tick bites them, picks it up, and then in the next stage it might bite you or your family or your pet. And that's how you get the disease. The deer, on the other hand, carries it around. I call it the bus, the transport system, because it goes over large distances. It carries the ticks all over. And oftentimes the ticks will mate on the deer also.
So prevention. I like to go out, hike in the woods occasionally. I don't do it as often as I would prefer these days, but especially when I was younger. Even young adult, I was always out hiking around and stuff. Mosquito bites were probably the only thing I had to deal with. What would you suggest for the outdoorsmen and all of us, especially for the kids even,
right,
who are out there rolling around?
It's unfortunate that some of the precautions are basic ones, and people don't want to take them. For example, the recommendations are for long pants tucked into your socks, because ticks usually climb from the bottom and go upward. Not always, but that's usually how it works when they're looking for a place to feed. Tuck your hair into a hat, and also there are different kinds of sprays that can be used. There are two different kinds. There's a permethrin-based spray that should only be used on your clothing, not on your skin. And you take that and you spray it on your clothing when it's not on you, and you let it dry. And then you can put the clothes on, and that can go through several washings. Now, DEET-based sprays, on the other hand, can be used on your skin, though you have to be really careful and read the directions, especially where it concerns children. There's a lot of studies.
You get these in drugstores or camping stores?
Yes, they can, like DEET-based sprays, you can get there. The Permanone or Duranone or other permethrin-based sprays, sometimes more like a hardware type store will have them, or even possibly some of the stores that carry plants and things like that might have those.
But even so, that's not 100% guarantee that you can keep ticks off of you, is it?
No, unfortunately. So the biggest thing that you should do are tick checks. And you need to do them anytime you're in an area where you think that ticks frequent. And so you should check every square inch of your body, and sometimes that's difficult, but that's what you need to do, because ticks will bite you anywhere. With children, they oftentimes will bite around your hairline and behind the ears, places like that, but they will bite you any place.
I tell you, as you're talking, I'm getting itchy. Oh,
So
yeah.
a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take a shower. Now, a shower will not remove a tick that is attached, but a shower will help you maybe see ticks, or if there are loose ticks, then maybe they will be showered off of you.
How do you know? I mean, obviously you're going to get the symptoms of Lyme disease, but initially, are there signs that we could look for if we've been bitten by a tick, especially a tick that's carrying a disease like Lyme?
Yes, unfortunately, Lyme has many, many signs and symptoms. Some of the most common ones that you can develop are a rash, which may or may not look like a bullseye. Everyone thinks the classic bullseye rash.
You hear that all the
to-
time.
Yes, that you have to have it. That is not true. Less than 50% of people will get an actual bullseye rash. Some will get no rash at all. Some may get a diffuse rash that doesn't look anything like a bullseye rash. So you can't be sure that you're going to get a bullseye rash. People get headaches, fatigue, muscular aches and pains, flu-like illness.
Almost initially, like right after the tick bite, or how long does that usually take?
That's a good question. It can be within 24 hours, or it can take months or longer for you to develop symptoms.
I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking to myself, really the only way you can protect yourself is just stay indoors, never go outside, it seems.
Well, I'm a person who feels in life, that everything has a risk. And if you cross the street and get hit by a car, I always say that doesn't mean you never cross the street again. It means you take precautions.
Yeah.
And one of the big things you do is become knowledgeable. Because you are the person, you have to take charge with this disease to prevent you. There's nothing at the moment, there's no vaccines for humans to prevent you from getting the disease. And by the way, there are many other diseases carried by the same deer tick and other ticks in our whole region. You can get more than one disease at the same time from one tick bite.
From just one tick bite.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Do you get out, like, are you a hiker yourself? Are you out in the outdoors a lot yourself?
I actually live in the woods. 2/3 of my property are wooded.
Right.
So I'm always exposed to that. And yes, I'm not a hiker now, but I do go out with my kids and now my grandchildren, and we take them fishing, and we always try to be cautious and also do a tick check and make sure that they have some kind of repellent on them.
Right. And what repellent do you use with your grandchildren or your kids? When you're out with
Well,
them?
that depends on, their parents usually make those kinds of decisions.
But
'cause that's
always
their-
a tick check at the end of the day,
Yes,
or
they
periodically?
when they get older, they need to do that themselves
Yeah.
because, and we always, try to explain that you need to do a tick check, and it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's a bug, and I'm like, right, but you do want to do it because it's a bug that can, do harm if it bites you.
Yeah.
If you get it off in time, you're in good shape.
Right. And your daughter, who contracted the disease 25 years ago, how is she doing now?
She's doing quite well. She lives and works in New York. She's in the medical publishing field, as a matter of fact, medical journal publishing field. And but of course she knows the disease well, and she uses alternative methods a lot to build herself up and keep the symptoms from doing her in, if you will.
Boosting her immune system.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Pat, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more about this really important subject. We're talking to Pat Smith. She's the president of the Lyme Disease Association. Very important, especially this time of year. We'll be right back.
What is the gospel? We talk a lot about our sharing God's Word daily, but what do we mean? Well, Paul gives us a very clear description in 1 Corinthians 15:4. That Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose on the third day according to the Scriptures. So we preach it, and so ye believe. This is the essence of the message of the gospel. This is what we want the world, all who tune in, to hear, know, understand, and believe. The financial support that you provide every month, be it gifts, endowments, property, whatever, that your support is going toward the sharing of God's Word worldwide. Will you share an offering for this month? Our address, Family Radio, Oakland, California, 94621. That's Family Radio, Oakland, California, 94621. Thank you.
Welcome back to Community Impact. We are talking to the president of the Lyme Disease Association. Her name is Pat Smith, gracious enough to be here and join us and really edify us and inform us. It's just such a crazy disease. We were talking about prevention earlier. Let's just talk about what happens when you get it, and it's so random. I mean, you're just out in the yard playing with your kids, or you're taking a hike in the park or the woods. Next thing you know, you're bit by this little tick, and then your whole life changes. You're a sick person. You once were a healthy, robust individual, and now you're sick. What's out there? What's available for people who are dealing with this?
Okay. Well, before I say that, I would like to tell people how to remove a tick properly, so that maybe that helps them and prevents them from getting the disease.
Please.
Because if you don't remove it properly, you increase your risk of infection. So what you need to do is what I always say, the don'ts outweigh the do's. Do not put anything on the tick. Don't put Vaseline, gasoline, nail polish remover. Don't burn it. These are all kinds of things which can cause the tick to regurgitate whatever organism it has into you. So you don't want to annoy that tick in any way.
That's so disgusting.
I know. So you take pointed tweezers as close to the skin as possible, and you pull it straight out. Don't squeeze its body. You want to go as close to your skin as you can, to the head end of the tick, and pull it straight out. And then put antiseptic on it. Now, you can save the tick for testing if you want, but the problem with that, of course, is that it takes a period of time. So in that period of time, you could be developing the disease. So when you get bitten, it's my experience that people want to be careful and watch out for symptoms, but they may also want to go to their physician, because some physicians will give you prophylactic treatment, meaning treatment without having symptoms. If you're unfortunate enough to get symptoms, you may or may not get treated, because there's a major controversy about how to treat Lyme disease and what Lyme disease actually is. Some doctors are paying attention to guidelines that are put out there for the treatment of Lyme. Well, that's for early Lyme disease, when you're first bitten. And if you catch it very quickly and you get appropriate diagnosis and appropriate treatment, you're probably going to be okay. But if you don't, if you delay, this bacteria has the ability to get in your central nervous system within 24 hours of a tick bite. So you want to be careful. You want to go to your doctor. You want to see what the doctor says. And if you have symptoms, the doctor will do an exam and will do testing. But the problem with the testing is it's less than 50% accurate. So that means it picks up less than 50% of the cases. You can test negative and still have the disease. So that makes it difficult for doctors and for you oftentimes to get treatment. And your insurance company, of course, won't want to pick up the tab. If they don't get a positive test, they're going to say, well, you don't have Lyme disease, you don't have a positive test. And a lot of times you have to appeal, and you have to find the literature showing that these tests don't always pick up the symptoms, and so on and so forth. So it is something that it's a fight, quite frankly.
That's unbelievable. A fight when you're already fatigued, when you're already down physically. Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, this disease, which, by the way, has the ability to attack every system in your body, it can attack. And so you may get other more complex kinds of symptoms. If it gets in your central nervous system, you may have problems with numbness and tingling in your hands and your feet. You may get other kinds of, you may even get psychiatric kinds of symptoms from Lyme disease. You get severe cognitive disability from Lyme disease. And so it's a problem that has to be addressed. But again, lack of knowledge makes it harder to address. So that's why it's so important for people to understand. If they get bitten, they should be immediately trying to find out about the disease. And sometimes they may have to educate their own physicians. And I say especially for women who are pregnant and who may have gotten bitten or who may already have Lyme disease, that the disease can indeed cross the placenta and it can cause birth defects or death of the fetus. So you need to go to your physician and get the appropriate exam and possible treatment for your disease while you are pregnant.
You told me that your daughter, who has had the disease for 25 years, is really treating it now with alternative methods. That tells me that our mainstream medical modality doesn't really address the issue properly. We don't have the medicine to really treat this disease properly?
Well, if you get it in what's called chronic stages, that means chronic, there's not a real clear definition,
Right.
but it usually applies to people who have gotten a couple weeks of treatment, which is a recommended treatment, and then their symptoms tend to persist beyond, say, 6 or 9 months, and those people continue to get sick, maybe off and on, because the disease can hide in your body. And so these people develop what we call chronic disease, and those are the ones that have the most difficulty, because we know that the antibiotics are not necessarily a cure. And the reason they're not is because this bacteria has ways of hiding and evading your immune system. And these are scientifically demonstrated. There have been animal studies which prove that the disease can survive even long-term treatment. So people then oftentimes are forced to find other methods to deal with their symptoms. So they look to alternatives to build up their immune system and so on and so forth to try to counteract the effects of the disease. It doesn't always work, and there may be times when you still need antibiotics, and a lot of people still do long-term antibiotics at various times, during their disease.
Yeah. You talk to I'm sure you talk to a lot of people who are suffering from Lyme disease chronically. I mean, it's horrible, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It almost, am I right in assuming this? Because it almost seems like you get the disease and guess what? You're on your own.
Well,
You figure it out.
That's kind of the way it has been, and we're trying to put a stop to that. We've been trying to work with the Centers for Disease Control because obviously they have a lot of control over disease definitions and surveillance and funding and things like that, the NIH, to try to get them to recognize the problems of people with chronic disease. They recognize the problems, they just don't necessarily agree that the disease is chronic. But now there's so much research that has come forth showing that the disease can indeed survive antibiotic treatment, that I think that some recognition is coming there that, they have to start dealing with this large amount of people who, go into the pool every year. Because let's say only 15% or so of people develop chronic disease. Over time, that's still a huge amount of people, and they just continues every year.
You had said here in the state of New Jersey, how many people diagnosed with Lyme disease this year?
Well, in 2011, which are the last actual reliable stats, the 2012 stats will be out in August. The 2011 stats show that over 4,200 people developed the disease. However, it's underreported by a factor of 10. That means 42,000 people developed new disease in New Jersey in 2011 alone.
Unbelievable. Are you laughing at me because I'm itching? I
No.
can't stop itching.
No, but
There's
I
ticks in
understand
the
that.
studio.
Yeah, there might be. You never know. They come in.
Oh my! It's scary. I mean, I'm extremely scared about getting this disease. I mean, it always scares the heck out of me, really. I mean, because I know once you get it, it's like I said, you're on your own. I mean, it's like you've crossed into a completely uncharted territory. Try the antibiotics, yeah, they don't work. What else are you going to do? I don't know. You know, and you see it. You see people. I mean, when they're sick like that, when they're chronically ill, there's a desperation. You know, you're just trying to find your way. You're just trying to find your way out of this very dark tunnel.
Yes,
Yeah.
and fortunately there are organizations out there that do help. International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society, ILADS, which is a society of physicians who actually do treat chronic patients, and they have been a life send for patients who have chronic disease. And then there are a number of organizations such as ours, and we don't do treatment. However, we do talk about the fact that yes, doctors use antibiotics, they use orals, they may use IV, they may use intramuscular, they may use combinations of both. They may also recommend alternative treatments in addition to conventional treatments. And so, but we do not, of course, get involved in treatment, but we raise monies for research. We have, in fact, we actually have established, along with a partner of ours in Connecticut, an endowed research center at Columbia University in New York just for chronic Lyme. And we have funded many research projects coast to coast. And in fact, our research has appeared in about 30 different journals to date. And we need more research. And so we need people who get the disease to contact their legislators at the federal level to say to them, we need a lot more research on chronic Lyme disease. And we also need legislation. And we currently have a couple of bills in Congress. One bill is H.R. 610. It's a House bill by Congressman Chris Smith here from New Jersey is the sponsor. And that bill would lead to a task force in Washington to oversee the aspects of Lyme disease in the different government agencies. And we don't have that. Most major diseases have a task force so that these interagencies can have cooperation and also have a public seat on that task force. We don't have that.
Does your organization have a hotline where people can contact you?
We have a website, LymeDiseaseAssociation.org, and that website will lead you to a wealth of material. We do have what we call an information line, 888-366-6611. We don't answer those questions, but there are places to go in there where you can get answers about Lyme in case you're not online. And also, we do answer email questions. We will not answer questions about treatment, but we try to send people to various areas that we know there. And we have a doctor referral, a nationwide doctor referral to what we call Lyme literate physicians. That is on our website. You can plug in a zip code and you can find Lyme literate physicians.
Awesome. Pat, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for being our guest here at Community Impact. Great to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, wonderful information. Thank you. It is a tough disease. It really is. Best of luck. And God bless you for devoting your life to fighting it. I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful testament, really. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. My guest, Pat Smith. She's the president of the Lyme Disease Association. You're watching Community Impact. We'll see you again. Take care.
You've been watching Community Impact, a public affairs presentation exploring issues that are important to the community of West Milford and the surrounding area of Passaic County and New Jersey. Community Impact is a production of WFME Television of West Milford, New Jersey. The opinions expressed on this program are those of our guests and not necessarily the views of the staff and management of WFME and Family Television. Thank you for watching, and be sure to join us again next week at this same time for another edition of Community Impact.